else I've done these standing up. Anyway, hello everybody, my name is Helen, and today we are going to be talking about the best books that I read in 2019. Should probably have the list available. As you are very well aware by this point, I'm sure we are nearing the end of the year, and so it is time for some end of the year content. And I'm very excited to talk about some of the stuff that I have planned to talk about. This video in particular is going to be the best books that I read in 2019. So these are all books that I rated 5 stars. I was playing with him, and he scratched me. But he's cute, so I forgive him. These books are going to be in no particular order in terms of which one I liked the least to which one I liked the best. They were all favorites of the year. There's no point to that. But they are going to be talked about in order of when I read them. So starting from the books I read in January and finishing with the book that I read most recently. The last time I recorded a video, I got through the whole thing and my camera had not been on. Love that for me. Anyway, let's get started. So the trend that you will notice for a lot of the early books in this year is that they were comics. I got super into comics at the beginning of the year and I read a ton. So the very first 5-star read that I had this year was Sandman Volume 1. This is by Neil Gaiman. The series is done by a variety of artists, and this follows Dream, who is the Sandman, as he comes back into power after being held captive for a number of years. This is a very dark fantasy. It gets very, very horror-esque, particularly in this volume, and it is spectacular. Oh, I knew I was gonna love Sandman. I love everything that Neil Gaiman touches, but I didn't realize how much I was going to love this series. It is older. I think it started coming out in the 90s. It is published through Vertigo, who is known for doing comics for adults, typically with much darker themes, sexual content, etc. And this was just so good. The volume that was the diner scene, spectacular. I've never been more engrossed in a horror situation than I was while reading the diner scene. At some point in life, I want to own this entire series. I still need to finish reading it. I've only read the first 3 volumes. It is 10 or 11 volumes long. It's just so good. If you are older, like, don't read this if you're like 14, but it's wonderful. Obviously, I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I loved this year was A Monster Calls, and this is by Patrick Ness. This follows a young boy named Connor, and his mom is sick. Let's just mute that. And Connor keeps having these really terrible nightmares, but he won't really tell anyone about them. And this yew tree that is in the yard of this church that's like right across the street from them comes alive at night, becomes a monster, and it comes and tells him stories. And it is so good. I remember like years ago Jesse the Reader just going like mad about this book and talking about it nonstop, and now that I have read it, I completely understand. It is wonderful and touching and heartbreaking. The movie is one of the best adaptations of a book that I have seen ever. Go read the book, go watch the movie, do it in either order. I watched the movie first because my mom wanted to go see it. She and I cried. We loved it. I came home. I bought the book. The next book that I rated 5 stars was Young Avengers Volume 1. And of course I didn't write down who wrote these. I hate Past Me. She was only here 15 minutes ago and she's already let me down. Young Avengers is exactly what it sounds like. It is the young group of Avengers. The older Avengers still exist in this world. They're still doing stuff, but these are younger people with similar powers trying to prove themselves. And it's so good. I loved it. I think there's only one more volume, but my library doesn't have it, and I'm frustrated, and I want to read it. Yeah, it's real good. If you like Marvel stuff, and you like YA, this is like the perfect place to be. It is the wonderful melding. I'm gonna stop that now. The next 5-star book that I read was Paper Girls Volume 3 I read the 4 volumes of Paper Girls that were all available at my library. I enjoyed them all. 1, 2, and 4 all got 4 stars each, but Volume 3 got 5 stars. It is by far, in my opinion, the best book in that series. It is a comic series by Brian K. Vaughan, who, if you don't know, wrote Saga, another incredible sci-fi graphic novel series. And this book follows 4 girls from the 80s as they go on science fiction type adventures. It is very a la Stranger Things, although less dark? I would say less dark, and more time travel-y. A+, 10 out of 10. It was great. The next 5-star book was Mockingbird, Volume 1. If you saw my wrap-up after I read this, you will know how much I loved this book. This book follows Bobby, aka Mockingbird, and she, on the brink of death, was given a combination of super serums. One was the super serum that they gave to Steve Rogers to make him Captain America, and the other one was the thing that I can never remember that they gave to Nick Fury, which is why he still is, like, young and around, even though he's been around for forever. And they don't know how these 2 things are going to interact with each other, so we follow Bobby as she goes out and gets into shenanigans and gets shit done, but also has to come back to S.H.I.E.L.D. base once a week for a psych eval. And one of the side effects of it, in fact the main side effect of combining these 2 serums, is that she gets increasingly sarcastic. I loved Volume 1 of this so much. You get to know her really well, you get to know her current relationship really well, you get to learn about her past relationship with Hawkeye and how they fell out, and the 2 of them are wonderful together. I would read an entire graphic novel that was just them sitting in a room yelling at each other. If you are into superheroes and you want to read about a badass female who is fucking incredible, then look into Mockingbird. There are only 2 full volumes of this comic series, so it is super easy to read. The 2nd volume is really short. It got cut off way too early, in my humble opinion, but I think it is a really easy place to start if you want to get into comics, and specifically if you want female-led comics. The next 5-star book, and the last comic of sorts, was My Brother's Husband Volume 1. This is a manga, and it is about a man whose twin brother has just passed away, and his twin brother's husband comes to Japan from Canada to visit him and get to know him and his daughter. You get to see the cultural divide really strongly between our Japanese main character and our Canadian main character. We get to see the twin brother learning to deal with the prejudices that he didn't really know that he had. I hate this part of filming. Yeah, it's just a really wonderful, heartwarming story. I highly recommend it. And now we move into more actual books. Hey, the first 5-star book that I read was Wild Blue Wonder by Carly Sorosiak. I loved this book so much, and I literally just picked it up because I was binging Owlcrate content, and on the Owlcrate channel they did a My Coworker Picks My TBR type video, and they've been doing it for each member. And back in the day, Corey was picking books for Karina, and she pulled Wild Blue Wonder off the shelf, and then Karina talked about it and said that it made her cry and that she loved it, and I was like, I also like to cry while I read books. Maybe I should check it out. And then I borrowed it from the library, and I read it, and I loved it so much that I ordered my own copy. It's such a good book. We follow a girl, I believe her name was Quinn. I probably should have looked this up. Oh god, I should probably cut that out. Over the past summer, Quinn's best friend died, and we follow the 2 storylines. We follow her and her family after the fact, and we follow her and her family during that summer. And it's about healing and grief and love, and I didn't cry, but I got real close. This is a slightly magical book. It takes place on their family campground that they run summer camps at, and it has just like this slightly magical feeling to it. There's a legend of a sea monster, and one of the best things about this book, in my opinion, is the relationship between our main character and her grandmother. The the two of them restore a boat together throughout the course of the book. And it's just wonderful. Their relationship is so good. I highly recommend this book. I feel like not enough people have read it. I feel like so many more people would appreciate it. I am also a little bit biased because I tagged Carly Sorosiak in a post about this on Instagram, and she responded. So the next 5-star book was a reread for me. I reread Coranda's Crown by Lee Edward Fody. This was a childhood favorite book of mine. I think I read it for the first time when I was 8 years old. I read it almost every year up until I was 18. Anytime I feel down, I pick it up again. It's a really short book. It's a really great book. Lee Edward Fody went to school with my mother, and she picked up the book for me when she found it somewhere because she wanted to support him, and then I fell in love with it, and I have bought every single one of his books since. This year in particular, he came to my hometown to do like a workshop type thing with the elementary school students, and I went and volunteered at it, so I got to meet him. Here's a picture. Look at us. It's great. He was wonderful, and I want more people to read his books because he's great. Coranda's Crown follows a young girl named Coranda, and when she was a baby, her kingdom was attacked by this evil witch, and her parents sent her away with a dwarf to live in the forest and be safe. And we follow Coranda at, I think, 15 years old. She needs to go and save her kingdom. And she does this because the dwarf, who has been raising her, who she knows as her uncle, is taken away by the evil queen because the evil queen knows that Coranda is alive and wants to kill her. Coranda has no idea that she is a princess, and it's just her figuring out what to do. There's absolutely no romance in this book, but there is great friendship and great adventure, and particularly if you have some young readers in your life, I highly recommend this book for them. The next book that I gave 5 stars was The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. I listened to this on audiobook closer to the beginning of the year, and I loved it. I listened to it in basically a day, so I don't remember a lot of it. Hence why I haven't moved on with the series, even though I own the rest of the books. I'm sure you all know about this book by now. Oh, I still have a bookmark in here. Hello. I'm sure you all know about this book by now. It's made its rounds on BookTube. Everybody loves this book, and for good reason. This book follows a girl named Blue, and she is from a family of psychics, although she herself is not psychic. She has the ability to enhance other people's psychic abilities. From the time she was little, she was told that the person that she kissed first would die. While she and her family are at a church and going through this ritual to learn about people who will pass in the next year, she sees someone, which is not normal. She never sees anybody. She asks for his name. He says his name is Gansey, and she reports back to her family, and they tell her that the only reason she should be seeing anybody is if they are her love, her true love, or if she kills them. We follow her as she meets Gansey and 3 other boys from the Eglionby, is that right? Yeah, Eglionby. Wow, I pulled that out of my ass. Eglionby Academy, which is for rich people. They are commonly known as the Raven Boys, and there's a Welsh king. Great friendships. It's great. It's so hot in here. The next 5-star book that I read, I know you're tired of hearing about it, but hear me out, was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I was so nervous going into it that I would hate it because of all the hype, and I ended up just loving it. I read this with the Word Nerds for one of their book clubs, and we did do a full hour-long discussion. If you would be interested in checking that out, I'll try to remember to link it down below. It's so good. This book follows a young woman named Monique, who is a journalist, and she gets hired to tell Evelyn Hugo's story. And Evelyn Hugo in this book is a famous reclusive actress who was at the top of her fame in the 50s and 60s, and she has gone into hiding for like 15 years and no one has seen her or heard from her, and now she's willing to talk to people. And we get to learn about each of the 7 husbands that she has had, plus the true love of her life, and it is a beautiful story. I cried very hard while reading this. It's so good, and I don't know how to talk about it because if I talk about it, I'm gonna spoil it. Just if you like strong women who are willing to do whatever the fuck they gotta do in order to get what they want, you will love Evelyn. She is Slytherin personified. And this was another book that I rented from the library and then immediately bought my own copy. The next book that I gave 5 stars was a comic book, and it is The Tea Dragon Society by Katie O'Neill, which has some of the cutest artwork I have ever seen in any graphic novel ever. This follows a young girl who finds a little teeny tiny tea dragon, and she returns it to its owner and discovers the Tea Dragon Society, which is a group of people who raise and take care of tea dragons in order to keep the tradition of raising tea dragons alive. There's a lot in this book. There's disabled rep, there's gay rep, there is really amazing friendships, there is a little bit of family dynamic, there's found family. The tea dragons are just really super cute, and even though this book takes like an hour at most to read because there are so few words per panel and everything is really simple and easy to read, it is fantastic. Please go check it out if you haven't yet. I think there's a link to the version that I read still available on Amazon, or not on Amazon, on Owlcrate if you would like a smaller version of it rather than the big cardboard covered one, because that one looks bulky. I'll try to remember to link it down below if it's still available. The next 5-star book was They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. This is another book that made me cry, and I cried hard, and I might have video of it, but you have to wait for that, because it's for a secret. Yeah, okay. They Both Die at the End is a story about 2 boys. One is named Mateo, and one is named Rufus, and they both get a call from this service called Deathcast, which will call you between midnight and 3 a.m. to let you know that you are going to die sometime within the next 24 hours. And the 2 of them end up on an app to help you find other people who are going to die in the next 24 hours so that you can go and do stuff together. So we follow their day together. I knew that this was gonna hurt, but it hurt in a way I wasn't expecting, and I really loved it. I did. I sent many a Snapchat to Nikki from over at XONikki right after I had finished reading this, because it's one of her favorite books. I was a mess. It was fantastic. If you haven't read it, go read it. The last 5-star book that I read in 2019 was such a surprise for me, and that was The Tomboy Survival Guide by Ivan Coyote. Ivan is a Canadian author. They spent a lot of their time growing up in the Northern Territories, but also spent a lot of time in their youth in Vancouver, which is close to where I used to go to university before I transferred. And this is an autobiographical memoir type thing told through short stories and snippets of their life. And it talks a lot about identity, figuring out your own identity, your sexual orientation, your gender identity. All of that is covered in this book. Ivan is such an incredible writer. I've read some good nonfiction, don't get me wrong, but I've never read one that made me have to stop and just appreciate how good the people writing it are at writing, and Ivan has a gift. They are kind of known in Canada for going around and doing talks at schools and stuff, and I hope, beyond hope, that at some point they end up doing some sort of a talk somewhere near me so that I can go and see them tell stories in person. The stories in here are stories that they often do tell at these live sort of performances or events, and I would just love to see them actually speaking the words. I'm so in love with this book. I need to read more by Ivan Coyote in the future, because they are spectacular. And those are all of the 5-star books that I read in 2019. What have been your favorite books of this year? You should let me know down below. And have you read any of the books that I talked about in this video? You should let me know your thoughts and feelings about them down below. I do respond to every comment on my videos, and I absolutely love hearing from you. If you liked this video, make sure you hit that like button, and if you like what I'm trying to do here, you should hit that subscribe button. You should do it. I'll see y'all next time. Bye!